This is Criteria.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Criteria. I'm Thomas Miras. I'm here with James Majewski. Hey, James.
Hey, Thomas. Good to be back.
And today we're experiencing kind of an interesting phenomenon, which always reminds me that God is sovereign over all things. Because earlier this week, we were doing an episode and we had to record in James's apartment because of construction outside of my living room. So we had to go uptown to his living room to record. And we didn't plan this in advance at all, but where we have a painting by my roommate, James has a painting by William Adolphe Bouguereau, and it just happened to be Bouguereau's birthday on the day that we recorded. That episode will come out after this one, but today we're discussing the film Metropolis by Fritz Lang. And today, without my playing it at all, I was just looking last night, and today is actually Fritz Lang's birthday.
Whoa.
So I was pretty excited about that. This is our first time having two guests at once on this show. They are founders of onlinegreatbooks.com, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. They also co-host two podcasts together, the Online Great Books podcast, which is kind of like this podcast, but for books, and the Music and Ideas podcast, which is kind of like this, but for music and, I suppose, ideas. So they are Scott Hambrick, founder of Online Great Books, and Karl Schudt. Welcome, Scott and Karl.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hi. I like that Bouguereau guy.
You're a Bouguereau guy?
He has that painting he has a bunch of paintings of shepherdesses, right?
Yes.
I know him then.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah,
Scott, I've
exactly.
sent you copies.
You guys are both also, what's the term, starting strength coaches?
Just strength coaches. Starting Strength is a brand, but that's we're more independent than that. So both of us coach out of Barbell Logic. You can find them online, produce lots of content and online coaching where you could hire one of us or both of us, I guess, if you really wanted to. And then we do Online Great Books, where you go and, well, what do you do there? So we send you books from the Western canon and we nag you to read them, which is a big part of the appeal because everybody could read these books, but you haven't. But you join with us and you will. And every month, once a month, there is a 2-hour seminar, which is not teaching. I get fired if I teach, so I try not to, where we talk about the books and we say, well, what do you think of Odysseus? Go. And hopefully, if it works really well, the members of the seminar have all of their thoughts. I almost said opinions, but thoughts really ready to go. And sometimes we fight. And after 2 hours, you think, well, that was about 20 minutes. And you're surprised that it's over. But it's very rewarding. I think I always enjoy doing it. It's a good way to spend your leisure and read the great books.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about this last night. I think in the hierarchy of pleasures of life, I think Online Great Books, a good Online Great Books seminar for me, having participated in the program for, I don't know, about a year, is up there with, it's like just under playing music and doing improv comedy, I would say, is like a really good Online Great Books seminar. It's like a great pleasure. That's really like the highlight of the experience.
Yeah, and we really ought to take a page out of your guys' book because we haven't quite figured out how to nag people into watching these films with us.
Right. Yeah, I think I don't know what percentage of people who listen, the small number of people who listen to this podcast actually watch the film, but I think it's a very small percentage of that small number. Yeah, so we're still figuring out.
Well,
that.
Just think how bad Netflix is. This is going to be better than that.
I hope so.
That's a great
that's a short
pitch.
argument.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a problem with that too. We do the Online Great Books podcast. It comes out every Thursday, and we read something that Karl and I can get done in a week. So the reading is rarely terribly onerous. But I think that most people will listen to a podcast about a book, and then they go away thinking that was equivalent to actually reading the book, and
Right.
and it's just not. We try to let them know what we're going to be reading next week, so they can go pick that thing up and read ahead and be with us, But I don't think very many people do that, and that's a shame. I would rather they read the darn books and didn't listen to the show, frankly. But
So, Scott, it's called the Online Great Books Podcast because that's the brand. But would it be more accurate to call it the Online Good Books Podcast as kind of like an auxiliary to the central canon you discuss in the program?
Maybe. It's sort of the Great Books adjacent book podcast. We try to read things that we think are important and things that are interesting to Karl and I, but we don't want to read stuff that's in the canon in our regular program because we don't want our members to listen to us and be influenced by what we say. We want them to have their own experience of those books. So we avoid most of the things that are in the canon. We did do a show on the Iliad. We did one on the Republic. We did one on a little chunk of some Aristotle, but we try to stay away from the canon. And we have our members that ask, well, when are you going to talk about this thing that we just did at onlinegreatbooks.com? And the answer to that is ever, never. We're just gonna keep reading these things that are adjacent to it and important. We try to read things that are important. Like we just read, we did a show on the first Horatio Hornblower book. We've done one on Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, Edward Bernays' Propaganda, The Canticle for Leibowitz, Dune. All these things we think are important, but maybe they don't fit in there with Aristotle and St. Thomas.
Right. You just did the Song of Roland, which is something that's maybe a little closer to being canon, or is part of the wider canon at the very least. And I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's an important Western book. It seems to have influenced maybe Tolkien, but it's nothing that I would fit in there with with the rest of the canon. So we try to do interesting things, frankly, we're commercial, right? We did one on the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And that
was your first time reading that.
It was my first time reading it, and we both loved it. But we're trying to attract some people to hear how someone might talk about books, and then of course to get them to join our program. Which you do at onlinegreatbooks.com.
Yes. Let me say also, I think we can say this on this show as well as the Catholic Culture Podcast. People who are interested in joining this program, which I really do highly recommend, and quite a number of my Catholic Culture Podcast listeners have done so.
They have.
People who are interested, if you use the promo code Catholic Culture on the website, or use the affiliate link, if that's the correct term, in the show notes for this episode, you can get 25% off your first 3 months of subscription. So the way it works is you get access to the program, the community, the monthly seminars, and they also send you the book for each month. So that's kind of part of the value of the subscription. It's well worth taking a look at.
Yeah, and for every person that does that and signs up, we kick back a little bit to Thomas and help keep the lights on for his show. So go do that.
Yes, which we appreciate. So you and Karl have a superb chemistry, and it's probably honestly the best of any of this sort of like book discussion podcast that I've listened to. It's the most purely like enjoyable to listen to.
Thank you.
And Karl also has a very mellifluous voice for podcasting. I mean, you both sound good, but Karl has this really like smooth, bass tone.
It's the microphone,
which I really enjoy.
It's the Joe Rogan microphone.
Oh yeah, maybe so. Maybe we should get one of those.
What Thomas is trying to say is that now the two of us are going to shut up, and you guys can just take the reins.
All right.
Everyone, this is criteria.
Well, I'm wondering, like, if we're going to ruin your chemistry by having two other people in the room. Just quickly, the other show you guys do is Music and Ideas with Trent. What's his last name? Trent Jones. Is that
Trent
it?
Jones? Yep.
And you guys are all amateur musicians and pretty knowledgeable about music, and it's a little bit different in its format because you're often picking a genre rather than one work of music to discuss. But it's just a really nice kind of broaden your horizons, kind of thinking about what's behind the music, culturally and in other respects show. So wanted to mention that as well.
Sure,
It's
thank
kind
you.
of fun.
I think both shows have pretty much the same focus, which is there is beauty out there that you didn't know was there. We're going to show it to you, and maybe you'll see it too, in both the books and in the music.
Let's go ahead and move to our film for today. You guys may or may not know this. I guess you do know this. We're discussing the Vatican film list, kind of as our basic selection of films for the podcast until we get through it, which was a list that was made in 1995 for the 100th anniversary of cinema, and it's got quite a broad range of films. And I think there are 7 silent films on the list. I think we've got 4 more to go after this one. This is our third. And this one is a huge classic of cinema. 1927, Fritz Lang's Metropolis, one of the first feature-length science fiction films. Huge, massive production on every level. 25,000 extras. Cost over 5,000, or I guess it was 5 million. 5 million Reichsmarks. I don't know how that compares to,
It sounds like a lot.
America marks, but
Well, that's the Weimar area, so that's essentially like 3 packs of Hubba Bubba. It's so inflated.
Yeah, right.
This film, I read that one reason German expressionism, of which this film is sort of a part, it's at the end of this movement of several years in the 1920s. One of the reasons it wound down is that the productions were getting more and more expensive. So yeah, the gist of it is this is a future in an indeterminate year.
I think it's 20.
It's a city very much inspired in some ways by the New York skyline in the 1920s, which Lang visited and cited as an inspiration for the design of the film. And it's basically, you've got these 2 tiers of society. You've got the glorious, playboy lifestyle and physical fitness and healthy running outside and whatnot of the the classes don't have names, but the people up there in whatever the upper level is called, and their eternal gardens and all that, and the master of the city is the father of the film's protagonist. And then you've got these subterranean levels where all the machines and the workers are. And they're just working 12-hour shifts, absolutely exhausted, being jerked around literally by these machines all day. And
so at the beginning of the film, the son of the master of Metropolis encounters this mysterious woman who indicates to him that he in fact is the brother of all mankind. These pauper children are his brothers and sisters.
She's like a pretty suffragist looking.
Yeah.
I've never seen a suffragist, but like that is very much like the suffragist, like the 19th century, 20th century American progressive, or like Soviet realist.
She's better
hero,
looking
kind of in her kind of
right
school marm outfit.
So this catapults him on an adventure into the underworld, where he identifies with the workers, and then that's the rest of the film. Kind of the drama that unfolds from there.
But also it has very strong Book of Apocalypse.
Yes, and this
mojo.
was something that surprised me because it's separated into 3 acts, and in the first act, I don't think there's any indication that this is in a Christian universe,
right?
And it's not until
other than Moloch, I guess.
Yeah, but even that is not really
right.
So it's not until the second movement that we begin to get these explicitly Christian themes and references, which came to me as a bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
But
Lang was raised Catholic.
Oh, okay.
His parents were Moravian, and he was raised Catholic. His mother was a convert from Judaism, and he was an atheist later in life, but he described himself as very Puritan, as a born Catholic and very Puritan, and he believed that religion was important for teaching ethics, even though he was an atheist. So you see all these Christian kind of resonances with somewhat more like secular humanist vision, maybe. I gave you guys a range of film options to pick from for our discussion, and I'm kind of curious, why did you both settle on Metropolis?
Carl?
I picked it because Scott is a Luddite. He's ready to throw his sabots into the machine. So
What's a sabo?
Yeah, you like sabotage?
Oh, sabotage. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, you threw your shoe. It's
like
an
an Australian slang of some kind.
It's a wooden shoe or something. So I thought it would be interesting. Something that has been a constant subtopic for us is technology and whether it's a good thing or not. We read a book way back in what seems like the beginning. We read some Gabriel Marcel, and he makes the point that we tend to get technology before we get the virtues to deal with it. So we have like a cell phone. Everyone has a cell phone, but we don't have virtues of moderate cell phone use. So you just throw this toy at everybody and say, great, go use it. And then they use it and they're up all night, doom scrolling. And, like from Jurassic Park, just because you can do something, you never stop to think if you should. So it's been a concern of ours on our own podcast.
I have seen Metropolis. I don't know. I've seen it a half dozen times probably, and
okay.
It is one of my favorite movies, and I wanted to watch it again and talk about it with you guys because it's one of my favorite movies, and I think more people should see it. And I wanted to talk about why it is. In 1927, no microphones, right? It's a silent movie. There are serious limitations in what can be done. And as a result, they have to create this this art form that, frankly, isn't realistic, and that's very interesting to me. I'm really not interested in watching perfect reproductions of human interactions on camera. Like I can go do that with actual people. I don't need to see that. So I like the fact that this is highly stylized and is specific to the medium. I don't really want to watch a method actor act exactly the way people do normally. I can go see that. It's not interesting to me. But the fact that this thing is its own peculiar art form and unsullied by really method acting pleases me.
I'm very much with you. This is one of the reasons why I've so much enjoyed the silent films that we've watched on this podcast, is because there's an acting style on display that you can see the sort of connective threads to the theater a little more explicitly.
And James is a theater actor.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that nowadays, like, those distinctions are a little bit blurred. Theaters have become more intimate, and the expectation of like a naturalistic performance is more, present among audiences. But, like, for instance, when Feder's father, Joe, J-O-H.
I say yo.
The master of Metropolis, when he's looking up at the rooftop of this cathedral at his son, and he throws his hands up on his head and falls to his knees, like, this is such a powerful, such an evocative, not just gesture, but then picture that it creates. And this is a vocabulary that's so much missing from contemporary cinema. Not that contemporary cinema hasn't found its own vocabulary to work with that is powerful in some ways, but I'm really drawn to this, and I hunger for it, and I'm so happy to find it again in these older silent films.
Yeah, that sort of, I don't know what we'll call it, this acting vocabulary that they use, like you said, it seems melodramatic now, and it seems like overacting, and it seems corny. But I was watching this and realizing that we still have in modern acting, we still have these sort of acting tropes. One of them that I used to see on television that used to drive me nuts, and now I don't watch television anymore, so it's probably still there, is you'd watch Friends, and these girls would crawl up on the couch with this cup of coffee, and they would hold the coffee like this, and they'd have their feet up under them on the couch, and they were acting out coziness, and you see it on commercials, you see it on television shows. Oh, and it's not just like a coffee mug you put a couple fingers in and drink out of like a human. It's like a big tureen of coffee, and so we still have these stupid acting tropes. And in 100 years, Jennifer Aniston sipping her coffee at Central Park is going to look absolutely retarded, and that pleases me. So I like the acting vernacular or trope or whatever here better, because I've got some distance from it. I think maybe that helps.
Now, as a watcher, if you and the audience are going to go watch this thing, it might be a little off-putting. You're going to have to figure out how to deal with this because you don't have the vocabulary. You understand Jennifer Aniston, you don't understand Brigitte Helm.
I think she was 17 years old.
Really?
Yeah, she was very young. I got to go look this up while we talk.
But a lot of what she's doing, I have a scene up on my screen right now that I'm looking. I was just rewatching bits of the movie this morning. A lot of what they're doing is setting a scene. They're making something beautiful for you to look at rather than acting like normal people would look. So the scene that I have, I'm on her IMDb page right now. It's where she's ringing the bell to call all the drowning children at the end.
She's hanging from the rope.
Well, not that bell. This is the one in the machine bell in the
when
town
she's
square.
pushing the lever over.
And I'm just looking at it, and you have the angle of the, whatever you call it, the clapper on the bell, and then her pulling, she's leaned over, she's pulling it, and she's leaned back. And you have the other angles, and the pedestal it's on is in all oblique angles, but the oblique angles are mirrored in the shadows in the background on this underworld city that they live in. And the kid is pointing out, and it's all the angles are consonant. It's like Fritz said, I want it to look like this. I don't care if normal people would ever do this.
Yeah. I really, another great example is when we're first introduced to the workers, and the sort of choreography of their gestures as they're working and pulling these levers on the machine, totally stylized, but totally evocative. I'm able to understand something about their condition.
Which is that the machine is operating them, essentially. Because it doesn't make any logical sense at all, like that would be how you would operate a machine. It's a completely ridiculous
because most industrial work is disembodied and ridiculous, and you just do one little piece of it, and you have no vision of what the entirety of the industrial task is. You're just like, pulling a lever, pushing a button, pulling a lever, pushing a button. You have no idea Chevy Impala comes out down at the end of the line. You're just pulling the lever, pushing the button. Yeah. It needed to be disembodied, that work that they were doing.
The way the movie starts, it shows the scenes of this this enormous city. It's like Blade Runner with better lighting. But then it goes to scenes of machines. And I kind of want to know where did he go to get all of these pistons? What is he filming?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just
that
beautiful
montage.
Machinery.
Yeah, that montage is incredible. Not just in the way that he frames off these pistons and cuts among them, but then in the way that they're collaged together and they kind of blend into each other, and they fade in, fade out.
Yeah. I love the montage in this film.
Yeah.
So Carl, just really, had you seen this before watching it for this?
I had seen bits and pieces of it.
Okay. This was James and my first viewing of the film. So what you guys were just saying about like the shapes and actors fitting in with a larger environment, that is a big part of this expressionist movement. So we've watched one of these before. We watched Nosferatu recently on the podcast, and we were kind of saying at the time, I don't really see how this fits in with expressionism. I'd read a little bit about it because, it said like the sets would be at crazy angles, the buildings would be distorted and stuff. That wasn't so much the case in that film. But one thing that they do that is typical of expressionism and you find in this film is where the focus is not so much on the individual actor, but on the composition of the scene. Which means since you can't have a perfect composition all the time, the actors are effectively like moving from like one more like less complete composition to a complete composition, and then like holding in place for a minute maybe. But also, mimicking the shape of the. So you brought up the lever scene, mimicking the shape of things in the set, and you see this kind of thing quite a bit in this film. And then another bit of it, which you also discussed, is the acting style. So it's not just that this is a silent film, although obviously this is more typical of silent film than it is of contemporary films. This kind of very exaggerated emotion, and also the form of movement tending to be kind of jerky and almost dance-like and choreographed, as with the workers at the beginning kind of like shuffling into the elevator, and also I think especially to me the character that conveys expressionist acting more than anyone else is the machine man. Bridget, is that her name? Bridget Helm? As the machine man specifically. It's interesting how I responded to the different characters in this film. You brought up Yo Fredersen as the example of an older acting style. It's funny because I would have identified him as the closest to a more realistic.
Well, I was just trying to identify like an example of a gesture that wouldn't work now.
Yeah. For me, like I liked his performance and the Thin Man the best, and the Machine Man the best of any in the film. I was fine with Bridget Helm as Maria as well. Didn't really care. I don't know what you guys thought about the what's the main character's name?
Freder?
Feder?
Freder.
Freder?
Freder. I didn't care for his acting. Like I didn't relate to it emotionally. It seemed overdone, but that just may be me coming.
He reminded me of our protagonist in Nosferatu, the kind of dandy guy.
Well, it's
so
also
I wonder
the
if
fop with the white makeup thing. I don't really care for that much, but I loved his father. I thought Bridget Helm was great, and I love the Thin Man a lot. The Thin Man is awesome.
Yeah. Frieder is definitely a Weimar soy boy and the weakest link in the whole movie.
Right.
I love the German expressionism because I think it crops up because they don't have sound. They are limited by they are limited by the media, by the medium. And as a result of that, instead of it dealing with backstory and character development and all that stuff I don't care about, it's an aesthetic experience. And I just love it. And this, I think, the Art Deco era through maybe the death of mid-century design, I think, is the last of true modern design aesthetic, and I just love to look at this movie.
Absolutely.
There since the death of mid-century design, and I don't know when the Jetsons got canceled. I don't know. Everything has been derivative. Essentially from that point, or it has been nasty and reductive and ugly, and so I just love Art Deco and that whole aesthetic, and this movie is about the aesthetic almost as much as the story, at least for me.
Yeah, I got to meet Karl in person last September in 2019.
Speaking of aesthetics, right?
Yeah, I went to Chicago and was just blown away by the architecture, and in particular the interior architecture. I would go into the lobbies of some of these great Art Deco buildings and just be like, this still feels like the future to me.
Yep.
It still feels like this glamorous future. I felt like I can feel the vanity of it, but I can also admire it. And I go in there. Some historical styles of architecture make you feel like a tourist in another time. When I went into these Art Deco lobbies, it made me feel like I was a mogul, just like walking through those halls. Like it made me feel like I was a part of this glamorous age with these incredible, U.S. mail post boxes of silver, and it's just mind blowing. And this film has a lot of that in it, and it's amazing. I feel like that was like the last great era of beautiful, majestic, American architecture.
I think we have probably lost the idea that things ought to be beautiful, and that I was just thinking about Aristotle's virtue of magnanimity, the great souled ones who, they're great, or magnificence. The rich, they know how to spend. They should spend their money on public works, but they have to spend it with taste. And I like what you said about feeling like you're a mogul walking into an Art Deco lobby. I think that's wonderful. And that's a work of. It's a work of love by the architect. I want you to feel this way. It's the same way in a good cathedral, right? You walk in and you're elevated. Right. It's on purpose. Yeah. But you have to have the idea that there's something there to be elevated, and that our architecture should do it. And
I thought about that watching this film when we were introduced to the Eternal Gardens at the beginning. I thought about my own experience in gardens. Coming from LA, I went actually at Thomas's recommendation to the Huntington Gardens and Library. And when you're there, you very much have like a similar experience. I did, at least, of feeling like, a mogul or like a rich estate owner wandering his grounds, in like Brideshead Revisited or something. And I was so grateful that the Huntingtons existed to build this beautiful estate and these gardens, and then to hand them over to the public, you know? And so there is this loss of magnanimity and of taste. And now actually we have kind of the opposite, which is that, well, no, like you can't have these beautiful things. They need to be wrested from you and then distributed across, the populace. And, I don't think a Huntington, like a great, munificent, wealthy, benefactor could really exist. Now we have like what? We have like Bill Gates.
They want to instead of creating, art and being a patron, they want to make sure you get vaccinated. It's really an odd thing. It's how everything in culture has shifted. So this has got that Art Deco aesthetic in conjunction with the German expressionism, which makes it awesome. And I'm here in Tulsa, the Tulsa, Oklahoma area, and we around this time in the 1920s we had an enormous oil boom and an enormous amount of wealth. They called it the Magic Empire. It was the Silicon Valley at the time. And we have more Art Deco buildings than any zip code other than Miami South Beach. And you go into those buildings, and like you said, the buildings are heroic. And we had all these wealthy people, city fathers, essentially, the founders of Phillips Petroleum and Skelly and Texaco and so on, built these buildings like maybe, right? There's somebody in charge of the city at that point, and they have an aesthetic vision. And then at the same time, we start to get Soviet realism, or socialist realism. If you ever go to Rockefeller Center and you see those murals above the doors, the entrances, of the guy running the machine tools and then the guy harvesting grain and all. I mean, it's Soviet. It's in the Art Deco aesthetic, but it has this sort of Soviet subject matter, and I see hints of that here, but the workers are oppressed. They haven't risen to that Soviet socialist realism elevation yet. But what's his name? Is it Gorat? The head worker. He's a big, strong guy, barrel-chested. He's got that rough beard.
Grot, I think is his name.
Yeah, I want him to be a socialist realist hero. I kept wanting him to be that, and at last he isn't. But there's just really interesting things about industrial design and art and film all in this sort of area. And then I can just go be in that for 2 hours and 40 minutes or whatever. And that's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of the running length, just for our audience, we watched the version that was, I think, 2 hours and I think it was 148-minute version that we watched on Amazon, the complete Metropolis. This one has the original score, a reconstruction of the original score by Gottfried Huppertz, which is a fantastic compliment to the film. That's another fun thing about these old silent films is how
integrated
everything and how big the scores are, how nonstop the scores are.
Apparently, so I was digging a little bit. Apparently, the original score was only. So I guess you would have gone to the movies and there would have been an orchestra.
Yes,
in the pit playing music for the film. They do that now. They'll do a Star Wars day and they'll play a bunch of John Williams music with a live orchestra. Well, that's actually an old practice, and I second your recommendation. The soundtrack. I was happy. I found it on Prime Phonic, which is where I go get my classical music, and you can just listen to the whole thing. And it's marvelous. And my kid from the other room is saying, "That sounds like John Williams." Did he steal? Well, John Williams probably never heard it, but if he did, he would have stolen it because that's what he does. But it brings in that French tune, which I can't pronounce. And
the Marseillaise.
Yeah, I don't pronounce French words, Thomas.
The French national anthem and the Dies Irae. It's like the two big.
Yeah, and it's a marvelous soundtrack. And when the machines come in and you have the pounding. The music sounds like the machines. It's pretty good. They made some rock and roll soundtracks for it. Apparently, Freddie Mercury did some music for it.
Right.
But this is better.
Yeah. I think that was the 80s, like the Giorgio Moroder version or whatever.
It was really striking to me how prophetic this film is, as a lot of sci-fi, functions. I really felt that I found a lot of resonances with the kinds of issues that we're grappling with right now, kind of on display here in this film from 1927. I don't know what about you guys.
I thought, I think the imagery, it's kind of satanic.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to put that out there. That Lang might not be a believer, but he knows what the unbelievers are like. Okay, so that Eternal Gardens where the rich young men are playing it's out of, what is that painting with all the weird stuff in it? The
Garden of Earthly Delights by Bosch.
Yeah, that one. That's kind of what the Eternal Gardens is like. There's trees there that look weird. The girls there are all strangely coiffed. There's an old man with,
to say the least,
hexagonal glasses going around puttering around. It's a weird place. It's not a wholesome place. It looks like hell to me. Okay. When we meet, well, then you have the vision of Moloch. So you have these people working at this factory, huge set, pistons moving, with this gaping opening in the middle of it. And as Frater is looking at it, there's going to be an explosion. As the explosion happens, and they're carting the bodies away just in time for the next shift. And then they just go on and do it again. But he sees this vision of Moloch. Moloch, as you should know, as your audience doubtless knows, this is the reason that the Israelites got rid of the Amalekites. It's because this was their god. And Moloch,
they sacrificed their children to...
Yes, you sacrifice at least your firstborn to the fire. Moloch eats children. And to put that in there and have, in case you don't get it, he has the screen that says Moloch, just so you know.
That's probably like my favorite moment of the film is when he sees the face and then he yells it, and then the
intertitle is like
titles. It's awesome.
Yeah,
it's awesome
and scary too. Actually, I have neat kids, and two of them sat and watched it with me. My 9-year-old watched. I had to have him turn away when the Whore of Babylon came on. He's fascinated, and it's very this expressionist. Yeah, it's weird acting style, and it's all set pieces, but he'll remember the scenes. It's visual things that you will remember. It's the silent film. It's what it's supposed to be. But so Moloch is a devil, eating these people. When you see the Machine Man, who is Brigitte Helm in a very cool costume, did you notice the pentagram behind her?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And why is he doing this? Why is Rotwang, why is he doing this? It's because the woman that he loved, coincidentally named Hel, Hel, she went off with Joe, I'm going to call him Joe, the head of the city, and died in childbirth, giving birth to Frater. And so Rotwang is making a fake woman, a machine woman, to raise the dead. This is necromancy. This is all creepy stuff.
Yeah.
And we see things like that now. There was a case where some parents used a deep fake video to have their son give a commercial message, their dead son.
Well, their son had died in the Parkland shootings, and they had a CGI version of him talking about gun control. And like, we don't judge them, but like,
I do.
That's horrifying.
Yeah.
Aeschylus warns us of all this stuff in Prometheus Bound. All this Promethean horror, and so does Lang. This stuff is. It doesn't feel like science fiction to me.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it 93 years later. If I saw it in 1927, it might feel more futuristic, but I'm not sure it did. If you were working super long shifts at the XYZ factory and knew some folks that had lost some fingers and, had that experience, how science fiction-y would this have felt? I don't know. But, people are continuing to be ground up by the machine. It doesn't look like the heart machine in this movie. It looks like a cubicle farm now. But they're being ground up by it, and Lang knew it, and wanted something better. Is this a communist film? Does this film have a communist message?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so either.
The politics of this film, I couldn't quite get my head around. I was trying to track that. I'm so primed, ready to sort of pick up on, here we go with the communist stuff. But it does seem like the working class and the noble class, the upper class, are equally victimized by this situation, and that even the master of Metropolis, who maybe he sort of exists at the top of this hierarchy, manipulating everyone. He sends the whore of Babylon out to sort of drive these rich sons mad, as he also sends her to sabotage the working class. Even he is victimized by his own lust for power and control, and has a kind of conversion at the end. So that to me problematizes a simplistic sort of political reading of this film.
Also, the entire thing about Maria versus the man machine is that Maria is encouraging them to wait for their savior, essentially, and the man machine tempts them with revolution. So it's clearly an anti-revolutionary film, even though it was suspected as being communist, because I guess in America, if you even talked about like underclasses being exploited, you were suspected of being a communist. But it's like Lang actually kind of disavowed this film later on, like in terms of its politics being super naive. Like he said, basically, like it's a fairy tale that any socially conscious film could say, that the mediator between the head and the hand must be the heart. He thought that was like just like a silly kind of like platitude or something. But regardless, I think it's clearly not a communist. It's a harmony between classes.
I wanted to point out that the whore of Babylon is a machine.
Yeah.
So in the plot, so they go down to the underworld. There's a lot of descending. Like, for me, it reminds me of Wagner in the Das Rheingold when they're going down to where the Nibelungen live. Like there's a very arresting elevator scene where you have the workers just going down. They're actually just standing in front of a screen, but the screen is showing descent into an underworld. And it's a really neat scene that you have buildings, but then there's lights on the ceiling. And so it's very clear that these buildings are underground in a cave. It turns out that Maria is somewhat of a prophetess, I guess, in a very Christian-looking cave with all kinds of crosses behind her, and she's telling the story of Babel. And well, anyway, it's a long story. It's 2.5 hours.
That's a great intertitle, by the way. The Babel intertitle is another of the great intertitles of this film, with the blood dripping from, or sweat or whatever it is, dripping from the letters. Yeah.
And so Rodvang catches her, and that's the famous scene that you've probably seen from Metropolis, which is where the living girl is strapped into the machine, and the evil scientist somehow, through science and lots of beakers bubbling, manages to make the android look like her. And so that's the transformation scene. It's very cool special effects. I'm not sure how they did it, probably with mirrors. And so the woman that is leading the city, the upper level and the lower level, to ruin is a machine. And the way she does it to the upper level is through the 7 deadly sins. She's the whore of Babylon. There's some nudity in this film, you know?
Yeah. This is a European,
it's before
if it
the
had been
production
American, it would
codes.
be pre-Hays Code, pre-Legion of Decency, and also European, so they didn't have that stuff anyway.
Well, they weren't decent.
So you've got some transparent, garb and, a burlesque. Basically, that is somewhat like to imagine that the whore of Babylon would be literally on a nightclub stage, like doing a burlesque dance, and that would be the way that she would.
Yeah, well, she comes out as the whore of Babylon. They have her supported on. It's like straight out of
literal whore.
Yeah, it's straight out of Revelation, yeah. She does all kinds of weird, jerky, strange dances, which I think is on purpose.
It's an awesome performance. Just like the eye thing, like one of her eyes being like weird, and it's really cool.
But what I found suggestive and interesting and science fiction prophetic-y was that Lang having the machine be the instrument of the lust.
Yeah. How about
and so,
that?
I mean, it's much more true now, but think about Weimar Republic, all these young Germans going and doing the weird things they did in the Weimar Republic. Well, did the technology make it easier? Does it make it easier to go wrong?
Yeah, that whole sequence, that whole burlesque dance with the men gaping at her and kind of twitching and breathing really heavily, and then there's Lang does this incredible sort of editing with these close-ups of eyes, many eyes, sort of evocative of the many pistons that we see at the beginning of the film. And I thought that if you just cut that sort of, like 90-second sequence or however long it is, like this is a poetic expression of the porn epidemic in our own culture. Like I thought that Lang really captures the sort of mania and the addiction and the violence that internet pornography has engendered, for an entire generation.
Sure.
And
well, they didn't know about internet pornography back then, but that's why it's prophetic, right?
Right. Yeah, that's my point. Is that I thought just on so many levels, this film was sort of casting into the future in ways that I don't know that they could have possibly. I don't see how they could have possibly known where this was headed, but it certainly seems to be the case, watching it now in retrospect.
You said internet porn, and
and then,
but we were talking about the politics. I don't know if we wanted to link this back up with that.
sure. Well, my thought on the politics, the worry is it communist? We did a show. One of my favorite shows is on Hilaire Belloc, distributism. Favorite because it made me angry. I was yelling at him when I was reading the book. But Belloc thinks capitalism and communism are the same thing. And he's got some pretty good arguments for it. And what I'm saying is it might be, is this a capitalist film? No. Is it a communist film? You see, people think, well, if it's not one, it has to be the other. If it's not a free market liberty film, then it has to be this other thing, the communist thing. And there might be other things that it might be.
You said free market liberty film. Like, I don't understand how those two even got conflated. And, you've heard me yell about this before, Carl. But economic systems aren't ethical systems. How you choose to obtain food, whether it's through free trade of some bogus currency or under some communist regime, it doesn't dictate how whether you think internet porn is okay or not. It's not an ethical system. It doesn't tell you what to do on a Tuesday at 4 p.m. And I'm so in that way they're the same. And for Belloc, he says that both of those things reduce humans to empty stomachs or production units. As problems to be solved or items to be maximized. And I asked, is this a communist film? Because that's the dumb question that typically gets asked about it. And I actually think that it is a cautionary tale about capitalism. When that capital all aggregates upwards, you're going to end up with a Joe, whatever. And you're going to end up with a group of people that have to work for him on his terms. And
I think it's like a warning about what provokes revolution as well. I mean, you can see this in the Babel story. We get kind of like a humanist reading of the Babel story. It's not that they're so much that they're offending God by pride primarily, as that they're exploiting. I mean, there is pride involved, obviously, but they're exploiting workers. And then the workers tear it down.
Yeah, but what was the problem was that they spoke the same language, but they could no longer understand each other in this retelling of the legend of Babel.
Right.
And it was because the brains, the sort of the dreams, the ideals, the intellectuals were no longer meaningfully connected to the working class, the people implementing these things. There was not a beating heart between them, and sort of the theme that gets really hammered home through this whole film is that the heart needs to be the mediator between the brains and the hands, right?
Yeah.
And I thought I was thinking about our current cultural situation in the United States and throughout the West, and the sort of breakdown of communication, the inability to we might be speaking the same language, but totally not hearing each other. And the analogy is perhaps imperfect, but I wonder to what extent the loss of this heart, in a way that the church has certainly served in the history of the West, Judeo-Christian values and norms, the soul of a culture. I mean, people say politics is downstream of culture, right? But I've also heard it say that culture is downstream of religion, and I wonder, if Lang is not reaching for that this is a politically and socially, aware film, but that its deeper logic is in a spiritual nature.
Well, just to connect this to the concrete plot, this idea of the mediator between the heart and the heads, the head and the hands, needs to be the heart. That's the function that our protagonist plays. He's supposed to be the mediator, this figure prophesied by Maria. And I am kind of curious, like, what Lang thinks the mediator is. Like, if it's not religion for Lang, what is it? You know, what is this? Not that the film is an allegory exactly, but what is... Because the two other, the head and the hands are clearly two different classes in this film, but the mediator is just one guy. So is it a guy? Is it the middle class? Is it the guy from the upper class who goes and talks to the lower class? Like, what is it in practical terms? Like, what is the mediator? Maybe that's why Lang kind of like thought it was stupid later on, because maybe it wasn't that well thought out, like what the mediator actually is, and maybe as an atheist he wasn't able to kind of like find an analog to that in reality.
Yeah, I thought that was. We got to the end of the movie, and my kids were watching it with me, and they're like, "What? What did they just do?
Yeah.
How did that work?" You join hands, I think, between Grot and Joe Fredersen, the head of the city, and now they're joined. I think it's a more religious film than maybe even Lang knew. When Frater takes the place of the worker on that clock machine, and gosh, it looks like a crucifixion.
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
So maybe that's the mediator. I don't know. Mediating between people who don't think they have anything in common, I don't know how that's going to happen. That's one of the woes of our present age. A lot of people are looking around and say we're so separate. There's nothing to do but violence.
It's Dave Rubin. He's going to save us all.
Oh gosh,
he is the mediator.
You're poking me, Thomas.
But that, earthly mediation is secular mediation is how's it going to happen? People usually in the course of human history, they mediate with bullets or swords or lances or something. So I guess it's a problem with the film, but it might just be a problem with being human, that mediation is difficult or impossible when you get so separate. But then again, think about what he does. What does he do? The kid, the character that you guys don't like, he chases his girl down into the underworld, and he sees the people in the factory dying. He goes further. He takes the place of one of them, volunteers, and takes the place and serves a 10-hour shift. He goes down to see to their little church and hears the message. And what does he do at the end? After evil Brigitte, after the machine has encouraged the people to break the heart machine. If you break the heart machine, the lower levels flood. They forget that their kids are down there. Okay? And so what Frater and Maria do... The
Great Deluge.
It's a pretty wet film at the end. There's a lot of water. I wonder how he did it. I want like the making of Metropolis. And
I wish the Amazon purchase had all the special features and whatnot that the DVD has.
I just watched it on Canopy. But he, at great risk to himself, he goes down and he's saving all their children. So substitutionary atonement or whatever, putting himself at risk for others, somehow that works out mediation.
Well, it's interesting too that in this film the heart of stone is replaced with a heart of flesh, right? Because the heart machine is destroyed and then it's replaced with the mediator who is supposed to be the heart. Yeah. So there's another indirect scriptural resonance.
There is kind of an emphasis on the heart during that transformation scene, Karl, that you referred to, where the machine man becomes the false Maria. It begins with the heart sort of glowing, emanating out of the machine man, and so this identification of the heart as sort of like the locus of our humanity, of our personality. Again, I think that this speaks to the film's fundamentally spiritual interests. Karl, I thought it was really well observed when you spoke about the diabolical nature of the forces that are driving things in Metropolis. Because that Eternal Gardens is kind of like just the project to have paradise on earth, the project to have the kingdom of God without God. And which is, of course, like what the Tower of Babel is all about. And it's also why I thought this film was so, prescient and relevant to now, especially in the way that it depicts a sort of elite manipulating all stratas of society. I don't want to go too deep into conspiracy theories or whatever.
Oh, yes,
but,
let's do it.
But this is something that let's put it this way. I've said it before. I don't need a conspiracy theory to explain the personality and the intelligence of evil. I'm a Christian man, so I know the devil is real, and I know that evil has a plan, and that these disparate things that might seem disconnected to me do line up in a cosmic way. And anyway, that's certainly on display here, where the master of Metropolis has a plan, and he's using the machines, he's using technology to sow chaos into society.
Well, arguably, it's the mad scientist who is the devil in this situation, because the master of Metropolis thinks he's in control.
That's right.
And the devil is like, I'm actually going to make this go
but the
my
master's
way.
using the devilish man.
That's true.
So
That's true.
Thinking that he's controlling him. He's thinking, I will use these
He's
things.
the one who has the idea, let's make this in the likeness of Maria.
But the Prometheans, think that they're the masters of the stuff that they're doing. And it turns out to, at least in this movie, it bites them. I wanted to point out.
What do you mean at least in this movie? When does it not?
Well, what does it say it says somewhere either in Psalms or in the Wisdom, it's something about, I see this rich man go by, I see this, and every day he's prosperous, and when is he going to come to ruin?
Well, that's up till the events in this movie. That's how it's been.
I love that. I love that it's that evil here uses these Promethean memes, and I was watching, this robot, this superior C-3PO, by the way.
Art Deco C-3PO.
Yeah, superior in every respect. Become this woman like thing, and then that would be used to subvert these people's culture and to sow discord, and people that listen to me know that I hate Elon Musk, and I just kept thinking about Neuralink.
I heard you ranting about him on a recent podcast.
I just hate that guy, and he doesn't know. He doesn't realize it. I think that he, you could ask him if he's trying to do good, and are your intentions pure, and give him a lie detector test, and he would pass 100%. He has no idea that he's just a tool, and of evil. And anyway, I just kept thinking about that, and I'll see people on Twitter, which I shouldn't be on. And people just love these ideas that we're going to be able to put a USB port in your head, and then Thomas can put one in his head, and then we can put an HDMI cable between us, and then we'll know each other. They just love all these ideas, and it's just horrific to me. And this whole movie's about it.
I hope we won't still have to use HDMI cables at this point.
Well, right, Cat 6A. I don't know, right? But whether he's an atheist or not, I think this is so interesting that an atheist can still see what is good, beautiful, and true, and maybe even against their will or unknowingly, they put it all forth, and I think he does. I don't think he's an atheist. I think he tricked himself. I think that that helped clear up some of the discomfort that we have when we decide we aren't. It's easier and cleaner to say I'm an atheist than it is for Lang to wrestle with all this stuff for all of his days. He's not an atheist. I just don't buy it.
Not in this film, for sure.
No. But he's super cool because he has an eye patch.
Does he?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like a pirate.
Yeah.
I'll show a picture. Is there an Antichrist in this film?
It would be Rotang.
What's Vong mean? V-A-W-V-A-N-G or W-A-N-G?
Heck, I don't know.
So it's red something.
It's a German word for syphilis.
There you go.
Vong,
I'll probably cut
V-A-N-G in auf Deutsch.
But are you Googling this, Carl?
Well, I could, but my keyboard might click.
Do it.
Okay, that's fine. There's more emphasis on the Whore of Babylon and on Maria, obviously, like Mary. There's a big resonance there with them being opposites. And there was one particular visual that I noted where
oh my gosh.
What is it?
Red penis.
Yeah.
That's actually it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
okay.
gee.
Wow. So that's literally it. Okay.
It's a little.
Okay.
So
it's a little on the nose.
Yeah, so to speak. The character. So the character is actually. His whole thing is being mad that he didn't get this woman. So, there was an image that I noted that where the parallel imagery, where the machine man. Also interesting that it's called the man. I mean, I know man is used generically, but even though it's in the image of a woman, it's still actually a man, which kind of reminds me of something to go on a tangent. I heard that exorcists say that demons manifest themselves as women to trick people, but when they're actually commanded to reveal themselves by an exorcist, they always refer to themselves, reveal themselves as not that they're actually male or female, but they always reveal their name as a man's name.
Huh, that is interesting.
Which is kind of interesting. But anyway.
Are you talking about Ellen Page?
Possibly.
I don't know who that person is, Scott.
Oh.
Let's not worry about it. So the machine man is being mobbed at the end of the burlesque dance. She's on this platform with the 7 deadly sins underneath, which is super awesome. And being raised up, and all the arms are reaching out, and then you've got this parallel image multiple times, but especially when Maria is on the platform with the lever and the gong, and the children are reaching out, and there's other times when they're all reaching out to her as well. So it's interesting. She's Machine Man is being mobbed by these men looking to exploit her, and then Maria is mobbed by children who are looking to be, saved and nurtured and protected and stuff. So these two different, very, very different visions of women as well.
By the way, that's the most honest gentleman's club, strip club in the world, to have her actually come out as the Whore of Babylon on the 7 deadly sins. You know, just be honest. This is what the place is.
But right. I think that increasingly that is the state of affairs in the culture. I see the mask coming off in the names of some of these clubs, or I remember becoming hip to a club in Los Angeles that literally was, I think it was called the Church or something, or the Chapel or something, and it was an old church that had been turned into a gay club, and it's the diabolic nature of this is no longer being masked. I remember there was a club on U Street in DC called Lost City or something like that. Really on the nose,
Yeah.
So I think that nowadays there probably are, strip shows with the 7 deadly sins and the horror of Babylon,
Right.
I don't think that
I'm thinking of Beyonce right now for some reason.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Well,
Madonna.
all the occultism, and
exactly
stuff is there on the surface.
Right, when the
now.
false Maria was sent to go sort of drive the men crazy, I was watching it with my wife and I was like, yeah, it makes you think of Madonna. Like, what's that all about?
Yeah.
So, on so
I
many
want to
levels,
give
this
you
film.
another, because
Go
this film has lots of biblical overtones in it. There's a story, I think John Chrysostom talks about this, where the demons are driven out of the young man, and they say, "Please have mercy on us. Don't send us away. What do you want us to do? What do you want me to do?" says Jesus. "Send us into the pigs." Okay? And so they get sent into the pigs. And then what do the pigs immediately do? They immediately race down the cliff into the water and drown themselves. And I'm just thinking of the people in this film when they're driven to revolution and they go and smash the machine and drown their own kids.
Wow. Right.
That's the first thing they do. Let's go do it. And
No, but the kids aren't drowned. They come through the water.
they do. And so
And
you
you-
have
Right.
the baptism thing there.
Right. And Maria's like, this mediator's coming. And the children are hers. And they pass I was like, yeah, she might be Girl St. John. But I was like, who is she? Like,
Or
who?
Mary.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but I was trying to figure out what if I don't know if how I don't know if we're torturing this too much to find this imagery here. I don't
Sure.
think we are.
Sure.
But
Well, this is a
who
Catholic
is she?
film podcast, so this is
Yeah.
the sort of thing that we like to do.
Oh, I do too.
So Carl is that strange exotic species of bird, the Byzantine Catholic. That's pretty cool. My last mass that I went to before the lockdown happened in March was my first Byzantine Catholic mass ever. And
Oh,
it was
good for
pretty
you.
Awesome. And Scott, you are I don't know, fellow traveler of some kind.
That's about as good as I can do. Yeah, fellow traveler
Gotcha.
of some kind. Yeah. I could go on a rant there too. You keep poking me. You poked me with with a stave ribbon. Yeah, for sure. Definitely a fellow traveler.
I know we're torching this, dear listeners, but if you're if the culture has it, and Germany was a Christian and largely Catholic culture, and you have all of this stuff, you can just walk around there and see it in their architecture, and the churches on every corner. If you have these stories in the air, you can make a film which doesn't have to directly one-to-one be allegorical. It just has colorings and shades and hints
Right.
of the common culture that you share. So it's not ridiculous for us to talk about the
No.
pigs or about baptism and St. John the Baptist, and
Right.
it's not crazy.
No, it's the soup that Long is swimming in, and it's going to be in his film. Has to be. Well, I want to just talk about how great Fritz Lang is. I am not a movie fan. People will know that listen to our other shows. I just don't watch very many movies. But I've watched a lot of his. M is fantastic. I think that Metropolis is his best movie, but M is really excellent.
And that's like a noir, right?
Yeah,
Like a proto noir.
yes. The Testament of Dr. Mabuse is really great. That's probably the third best of his movies.
Starring Rudolph Kleinrogge, who plays whatever the mad scientist's name in this film is. I forget, but I think it's the same actor, right?
Yeah, I believe that's right. And Die Nibelungen, huge, long, I don't know, it's 5 hours long, about that German folk story. Very Wagnerian sort of silent film, and I've sat through that whole thing, and it's well worth it. Long is just
The only other one by
astounding.
him I've seen is The Big Heat, which is an American noir film that he made.
Long is fantastic, and spend some time on those movies would be.
Apparently, he was
idea.
a pretty ruthless director. As I mentioned, there were 25,000 extras on this, and he didn't always treat them very nice, or the actors, the main actors either. For example, for the scene where the city is flooded, Bridget Hellman, 500 children from the poorest districts of Berlin, had to work for 14 days in a pool of water that he intentionally kept cold. And in the burning at the stake scene, her dress actually caught fire at some point. Like, there's all sorts of stuff that he
actors and
forced
actresses
them.
is not a bad thing, is it?
I don't think so.
No, they'll tell you nowadays that it is, but that's just because they're making bad art. Yeah.
Yeah, the robot costume was supposedly made out of wood and plaster of Paris, and anytime she moved, it pinched and bruised her. And
Was she? Wait, who was inside the robot?
it was Brigitte.
Brigitte?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
She also played Death.
I didn't know
Going
that.
through with the scythe.
Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
before we finished, I wanted to just say how impressed with her performance I was. You look at the credits and it's like all of these credits and then her name. Like, she plays all of these different, she puts on all these different hats in this film. But when you look at the difference between Maria and the false Maria, I feel like that's enough to sort of lay all the acting accolades at her feet. Because with her portrayal of Maria, with just a glance, we totally get that this is, a pure woman who's able to inspire, who's able to change a man at just a look. And Fritz Lang takes advantage of that with these close-ups on her face and these slow, movements. And but then when she dons the hat of the false Maria, her whole
Her movements
thing changes.
are different.
When she's speaking to the workers down below, she's now like this, hunched over and
She does a lot of
beckoning them.
back bending, like hip forward poses.
Right. Yeah, it's very
when
interesting.
Yeah. I would say I watched it. This is one of the things you worry about watching an important film off some film critics list. Am I going to like it? Is it actually going to be good? And sometimes they aren't. Sometimes they're just on the list because film critics like them.
When I was watching this, I was thinking of other, big blockbusters nowadays. I never saw Avatar, but for some reason, like the movie Avatar kept coming to mind, like something approximating the level of vision that this film Metropolis has. Fritz Lang really has a grand vision for this world that he's building, and he executes it very well. And it's no less impressive now, 93 years later.
Absolutely.
Would it be as impressive if he had done it with CGI? Would it
Not,
be
absolutely not.
And so, the workmanship is impressive, right? As a feat is impressive, but it's also because workmen had to paint the sets, because they had to build this huge sound stage, because they had to come up with the lighting, because they had to freeze all those children in the water. It's grounded in reality in a way that makes the film more compelling than watching blue people that were CGI'd. And there's something about being having to create the special effect from your ingenuity out of reality that is compelling to me and better and more interesting.
All right. Well, what's our next film, Thomas, coming up in the pipelines?
Next time we're going back to the... Wait, no. Next time is our Christmas episode.
It's a Christmas special.
I was confused because we already recorded it. We're doing It's a Wonderful Life. With a special guest. Should we say who the guest is?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to do it with Patrick Coffin, a very popular Catholic podcaster and media mogul. He knows a ton about the film. He's watched it bajillion times and has even interviewed someone who was in the film on his podcast.
Yeah.
So
that's going to be a really great episode. That should be coming out, right around Christmas, maybe a few days before, maybe a few days after. I don't know, depending on when this episode launches. But Karl, Scott, do you guys have anything you want to pitch right here at the end? Anything coming down the pipelines?
Well, when this is released, the online great books will be open for enrollment probably when this is out.
Oh, perfect.
I believe.
Yeah, we open enrollment once a month nowadays, and we'll be open on December 7th through the 14th. So you can go to onlinegreatbooks.com and use that discount code Catholic Culture to get a discount your first 3 months and read stuff like Plato and Aristotle and Marcus Aurelius, and go to seminar. And maybe Karl will be your host.
Maybe. I want to just point out, you hear that list, you say, oh my gosh, that sounds heavy. But it isn't. The Odyssey is so much fun.
Yeah.
These books are exciting and good and hilarious and challenging and
Plato
such
is
a good
fun.
use of your time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the reading schedule is pretty easy.
Yeah, we try to pace the reading so that you can get it done in 30 minutes a day, 6 days a week. And sometimes that means we read a lot of pages. When it's the Odyssey, you might just tear along through there, and sometimes it's 4 or 5 pages a day.
Yeah, it's great. I encourage people to check it out. And if you want to learn more, go and listen to my Catholic Culture podcast episode. I'll link to it in the show notes. I want to say it was like episode 27, but I'll put an overlay on this video correcting that if it's wrong. It's great stuff. And of course, there's the Online Great Books podcast and Music and Ideas, which we mentioned before. Guys, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Now, just promise me, Thomas, that you guys will talk about how It's a Wonderful Life is propaganda for fiat currency and fractional banking. Please tell me you did that.
We've already recorded the episode, but now that you've said that, we're going to have to go back and record it again.
I would be glad to do an hour and 45-minute monologue about that POS, that movie. I hate it. I hate it.
Maybe we'll have you on next Christmas.
Yes.
We'll talk about It's a Wonderful Life again, because it ain't Christmas if you don't watch It's a Wonderful Life. We'll probably just have to talk about that movie once a year for as long as this podcast continues.
It sounds like for Scott, it ain't Christmas if you do watch it.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Yeah, like we could talk about Aquinas.
I loved it.
Aquinas and his injunctions on banking and fiat currency and everything, and then that movie's just propaganda for that. It drives me nuts, and everybody's like, "Oh, I love it. It makes me feel so good." I get my big cup of coffee and I sit on the couch and I get all cozy and watch that stupid propaganda that Frank Capra was paid to build right in the middle of the bank runs of the Great Depression. It's awesome.
This is the best part about podcasts. You get people who actually believe stuff, and are passionate about it. And
that was a good callback. That was like a perfect comedian, like stand-up hour set callback.
Thank you.
Early joke, Scott.
Yes, and well, thanks for letting us come on here. A great deal of fun, and glad you guys made me watch Metropolis again.